Hey beautiful people, welcome to the Astro Analysis for June 22nd to 28th, 2020. Hey beautiful people, it's your girl Shakima stopping in for the launch of the Astro Analysis weekly forecast. I am all of 30 minutes behind my schedule, but directly in divine timing. I just kind of had to await. My neighbors were actually having a barbecue, and I felt like, as fellow co-creators, God has given them the opportunity to have their space, so I just needed to let their space ride out and give myself an opportunity to, I guess, allow for the opening of my space to take place. But thank you guys for sort of joining me in the space today. I actually wanted to thank you, beautiful. Thank you for sort of being here. I actually wanted to be able to speak about this coming week because it is going to be quite a intense week in terms of energy. And if you've ever watched an astrology forecast, that word is probably utilized a lot, but that's because there's a lot of placements that's taking place astrologically at the minute. And I think it's kind of really giving us an opportunity to clear away a lot of the baggage that we've been carrying and really give us an opportunity to start some fresh chapters. But it is going to be very, very difficult for us to navigate through the energies. I'm not going to front. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's not going to be easy. Neptune is going retrograde in the next couple of days, and whenever Neptune goes retrograde, we don't get to live in unrealistic realities. We actually have to do work, and it's very, very intense. It's very deep spiritual work that has to be done, and because Neptune is going to go retrograde in the sign of Pisces, a lot of our subconscious traumas, a lot of our subconscious wounds may be triggered so that we can work on those. And sometimes it's not even about having to do anything. It's just about accepting the reality that that was something that took place, because a lot of the times when we go through traumatic experiences, it's something that is a little bit difficult for us sometimes to be able to accept. And I think that with Chiron being in retrograde for the entire year, we're really just getting an opportunity to be able to go deep within ourselves and really understand exactly how wounded we are, how we can actually sort of work on some of those issues, and really just give us an opportunity to see what is the best course of action to take. And right now, with all of the planets that are in retrograde at the minute, there may not necessarily be any action that is necessary to take. It may just be a process of us observing parts of ourselves that have been affected by certain situations. So it's going to be very, very intense, guys. So I want to start off by just really sort of mentioning this particular Cancer new moon solar eclipse energy, guys. It is intense. A lot of people are going to be having, how can I put it? There's going to be a lot of downloads that people are going to receive, because Cancer is quite the intuitive sign. And we are also going to be sort of having to put our ego to the side to be able to allow for these downloads to come through. So a lot of it, it's almost like, the best way that I can put it, it's almost like Spirit is going to be asking us to be able to really just humble ourselves. And that's probably the best word that I can use, because I can see, as I'm sort of saying that, I can see that there's going to be some sort of combative energies with a lot of egos that may feel like they don't necessarily want to be the one to apologize, or they don't want to be the one to basically say that, they have done something that is outside of their character. But Spirit is like, this is the only way to grow. The only way that you can grow is to learn from your past mistakes and learn from, the past challenges that you've sort of gone through. And I think with this week that we're sort of navigating through, guys, it's going to be a beautiful end to the year. I'm just going to say that. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for us to navigate through, but I think we won't necessarily see the outcome of just how much work we've done until we're sort of at the end of the year, when we sort of come down from all of these retrograde energies around about sort of mid to late November. So just bear that in mind. If at any point during this time you feel like you're constantly being pushed, you're constantly being forced, you feel like you just kind of want to take a minute to, just revel in your human self as well. I'm not going to sort of say don't do that, because I find that a lot of the times, you can tell somebody not to do something, but the best lessons are the lessons that we learn by experience. And I think that when we learn a lesson by actually navigating through it, there's something that changes within us. There's something that shifts within us. It's almost like it allows for our hearts to be open in a completely different dimension to ourselves and to others. Thank you, beautiful, and I appreciate that. I actually had a cleanse today for the Cancer new moon eclipse. That's something that I'd say to you guys as well, like, because we're going through a lot of emotional purging for this Cancer new moon eclipse, I would definitely recommend doing as much as possible to detox the body, detox the mind. Meditation, yoga, just breathing actually helps sometimes, because a lot of the times, because Mercury is now effectively in retrograde, we are going to be dealing with a lot of confusion, and our mind is going to be going like 100 miles an hour, thinking so many different thoughts, and it's difficult to catch each thought as they're sort of, coming to surface. So if you are struggling with something like that, where your mind is a little bit scattered and you are struggling to be focused and you do find yourself to be confused, just take a minute, breathe and observe yourself. Observe what's going on in the back of your subconscious mind. Connect to yourself, because Neptune goes retrograde on the 23rd, so on Tuesday. And when Neptune's retrograde, that is actually giving us an opportunity to, in most cases, it's almost like there's a gateway between our conscious and our subconscious mind, because Neptune's going retrograde in the sign of Pisces. Neptune's exalted in the sign of Pisces. It likes Pisces energy, basically. So it's able to thrive in that kind of environment. And I think if you can really just take a minute to breathe and observe your thoughts that are taking place in your subconscious mind, because that is kind of where our soul, our God spirit within ourselves really engages with us. And sometimes it's very difficult for the human ego to comprehend a lot of the things that, God is saying to us, because it speaks in a higher vibration, it speaks in a higher resonance, and it speaks in a resonance that is about the consciousness that is, collective consciousness. So sometimes God will be asking us to do something for the sake of collective consciousness, and I think sometimes it's a little bit tricky for our ego to be able to say, okay, I'm going to surrender to that, and we're going to be sort of dealing with a lot of that this week, because Mercury is now effectively in retrograde in the sign of Cancer as well. And this Cancer new moon energy that we're having, guys, honestly, like, I'm sending you guys so much love and faith and trust in the path that you're on and the process that God is taking you through, because though we don't know exactly where it's going to lead us to just yet, the only thing that I can say is there's great things in store for us with this astrological alignment. There's amazing things that is really going to be sort of unfolding for us as the year continues. So I'm just going to go straight into, after just sort of giving you guys a little bit of a 10 minutes breakdown, I just want to go into like the astro forecast for this week. So Mercury, as I mentioned, is in full-on retrograde motion in the sign of Cancer. So it's really helping us to express ourselves, and it's really helping us to basically learn how not to overreact, because sometimes we can put ourselves in situations where we may be triggered, right? And it's easy for us to basically project that as opposed to observe it. But a lot of the times, the things that we're projecting at other people are basically our own internal struggles, our own internal difficulties that we're challenged by. And with the Mercury retrograde, it's going to be in retrograde for the next 3 weeks. So we do have a lot of frustrations that we're going to be navigating through, but only to help us to basically be a little bit more open and honest, first and foremost to ourselves, but also to the people that love us most. Because sometimes we may take on a lot, and sometimes we may take on the burdens of others because we tell ourselves that maybe they aren't capable, or they can't do it without us, or they need us to be able to help themselves. And that's not necessarily the truth. If anything, they need our inspiration, they need our motivation, they need us to be able to be an example outside of them, to show them, as a shepherd leading the way. Not to say that they're a sheep, but sometimes they need to be able to have a certain element of guidance along their path as well, and they themselves are lost. And sometimes when we navigate through certain experiences ourselves, it's a little bit easier for us to sort of say to someone, hey, when I was going through this situation, I took a left at this road and it led me to this reality, and what I would say with that as well, place no expectations on that, because though you might have the best interest to let somebody know, you're kind of warning them away from danger, they, again, like I said, sometimes the best lessons are learning by experience. So they may need to go through that to be able to learn from it. What you can do is be a support system for them, be a compassionate guiding force for them. And try as much as possible, I know it's tricky, guys, but try as much as possible not to judge their path or not to judge their process, because that is the path that Allah, God, has decreed for them to be able to navigate through, to get closer to God, you know, the God within themselves, the God spirit that lives within them, that is constantly just wanting to give love to the world, even though at times there may be experiences that shows us that maybe ourselves or other people aren't deserving of that. God loves us in all our imperfections. And I think from what I'm learning throughout my own process is that God is really trying to help us to be able to live in that reflection towards our fellow brothers and sisters of mass consciousness. So it is going to be very, very tricky. Mercury is sort of highlighting the frustrations, particularly within our home circumstances. So I mentioned in the first 10 minutes that my neighbors were having a barbecue and they were sort of playing their music and just vibing. And instead of getting frustrated, I just kind of had to be humble and be patient and ask God to let me know when it's my time to be able to sit in a space where it's uninterrupted, you know. And I learned something in that moment, because it's taught me that patience may not be something that comes naturally, but with God, it is something that is effortless. Because just by sitting in the space, and I'm getting really, really emotional, so at some point in this, I may cry, guys, disclaimer. But it just like really showed me that if we ask, we can really receive. And I didn't even necessarily have to wait too long. God was just like, you know, your time is coming. Just sit and be patient, meditate, observe, write something for it, for God's sake, just so that you kind of can utilize this time as well. So sometimes when certain doors seem closed, it's actually not closed. It's a window of opportunity that we aren't observing because we're too busy being focused on the door that we're you know, just, it's like tunnel vision. We're focused on that door and it's like, it must be that door, it must be that door. And God's like, but hold on, I have a window of opportunity just right here and it has your name on it. If only you can take your focus from that door that is clearly not what I have intended for you, you may be able to see this window of opportunity is much better in alignment for where you're trying to navigate through. Because sometimes, right, we have these intentions of what we want to manifest, but we don't necessarily know how to do it, but God does. And God kind of wants us to be able to kind of just trust him and trust the process and just let things unfold naturally and without the desire for control. Yes, we are here to master the elements of our ego and its tendency to live in its version of control, but ultimately the only control that we have is self-mastery. And a lot of the times when we have intentions that we're setting, God is saying, right, well, this is a great opportunity for you to master this particular challenge. And once we master that challenge, because again, remember guys, like God only gives us what, you know, he thinks that we are capable of. He only gives us what we're prepared for. And sometimes we get frustrated whilst we're in the preparation phase because we just want to go straight out there and we're just like, give me center stage. And God is like, but you need to learn your lines. You need to analyze the script. You need to embody the character. You need to become that vibration of the person that you feel that you want to, you know, project yourself out there into the world as for your specific purpose, you know. And some people at this time as well, because of all the changes that are taking place, some people may be experiencing issues with moving at the minute. There may be delays with their moving situations because with Mercury being in retrograde, it is going to cause a lot of disruptions in terms of timing. And again, some people may find themselves doing home renovations at this time because of the fact that Saturn and Pluto are both in retrograde in our 10th house, the sign of Capricorn. And it's really just kind of giving us an opportunity to set more of a solid foundation for ourselves, to really analyze the structure that we're trying to bring into the material world. And it's really asking us to dive deep within ourselves and observe, you know, is this home really serving me? And when I say that, I don't mean, is this something that my ego feels like, you know, it doesn't want any longer? I don't mean that. I mean, is this home, we may feel like we've outgrown the home, right? We may feel like it's small, it's compact, it doesn't have enough room, it doesn't have enough space, we're growing too much. But at the same time, is this home, how can I put it? Is it confined enough to allow for us to feel comfortable? Does it give us the nurturing support that we need? Does it allow for us to be able to just focus on ourselves where we're not spending a lot of times just constantly having to clean. If you think about it, like if there's a bigger space to work with in terms of a home, there's more room to clean. Okay, so I think as we go through this process of going through home renovations and moving homes, and we may even be moving homes internally, guys, and I really want to sort of like address this as well. We may be moving from pride-based consciousness to unconditional love. So our home internally may be shifting at this time as well. It may not only be an external home that is actually sort of going through renovation, or our internal temple may be going through a renovation at this time, and we kind of have to allow for the process to take place naturally, because Jupiter is also in retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, helping us to be able to do the internal work along with Pluto. And at the minute, Jupiter is conjuncting Pluto, which means that we are sort of going through a lot of psychological warfare, for lack of a better way of putting it. There's a lot of subconscious aspects of ourselves that we may not realize is still impacting the way that we're, projecting ourselves out there into the world. There may be a lot of psychological issues that we may not realize is actually impacting our social relationships, our romantic relationships, our business partnerships. And these planets at the minute are really just giving us an opportunity to observe those. What I do want to say as well is to utilize this time to really ask yourself if you want to keep going forward in the way that you have gone ahead thus far. Because right now we're actually sort of getting opportunities to break some of the old cycles. And because this new moon is sort of also a solar eclipse, bear in mind, right, we just had the Sagittarius full moon a couple of weeks ago, and that was a lunar eclipse. So we got an opportunity to purge a lot of emotional baggage that was really sort of affecting our philosophies. It's almost like we weren't really showing up as our true selves. We were saying these things based on our philosophies, but we weren't necessarily living in the vibration of that. And the Sagittarius full moon 2 weeks ago was basically showing us all the ways that we weren't necessarily living up to those ideologies and philosophies that we have, right? And now with this solar eclipse, those egoic identities are about to be dissolved, guys. And it's a beautiful time. It's a graceful time. It is a magnificent time for us as collective consciousness, because it's almost like there are going to be breaking points in order for us to sort of break through. Sometimes a breakthrough can be observed as a breakdown, but as the old sort of dies, that's what's taking place. It's like a tarot moment in the tarot where, everything is falling apart for our best good, because it no longer serves us where we're going, beloveds. And I think if we can just accept that and just really think, okay, if God is taking something that I'm this attached to away from me, I wonder what he's going to be bringing me in its place. Let your heart wander into the realms of what you're receiving, as opposed to focusing on what you're having to let go as a sacrifice to be able to receive that which you intend to sire into your orbit. I do want to say as well, during this time, there may be a lot of breakups and separations. Reason being the fact that Saturn is in retrograde. Venus is also in retrograde, guys. And with Venus being in retrograde, Venus is like, we have to address the things that weren't working. And if we don't necessarily address the things that aren't working, we're really sort of heading for Doomsville, unfortunately, because sometimes, when a chapter closes, it may be that that partner may not be in alignment with the version of ourselves that is materializing in our future timeline, right? And as we are going through the process of quantum jumping from this reality of our present versions of ourselves into that next version of ourselves, Spirit has something or someone that is more of a suitable vibrational match to be able to allow for you to navigate through the process a little bit more authentically, because sometimes when we're sort of like engaging in relationships that may not necessarily be true, and what I mean by that is it may not necessarily be open, it may not necessarily be honest, and Spirit is giving us an opportunity to be able to really address some of those things, and where we can get to a place where there are people that are more aligned to the version of ourselves that is kind of materializing. We kind of just have to, how can I put it, observe our emotional attachments and ask ourselves why we are fighting this blessing that God is gifting to us. Because sometimes, you know, we're asking for things and we're like, please God, give me this, show me a sign, you know, let me know what your intentions are for me. And God can throw so many signs at us, right? But it's almost like the only sign that we're looking for is basically things breaking down. And even when things are breaking down, we still keep turning a blind eye for the sake of our emotional attachments. And I think what I do want to say, like, if there's anybody that's struggling with that emotional attachment at this time, I mean this in the nicest possible way, but this too shall pass. And though we want to, I don't know if you guys can see, but my lights are actually flickering at the minute because like the guides are really supporting this particular download or guidance in terms of what I'm saying. But nothing lasts forever, beloveds. Everything is only temporary. And when we can become okay with that notion, and when we can become acceptant of that reality, it allows for us to navigate through the waves of all of the changes that is necessary for our growth, all of the changes that is necessary for our evolution. We can actually navigate through them with an open heart and an open mind, and with gratitude, for God's sake. I mean, like, God is doing so much for us at this point to help us to be able to really just not just change in the external, but change internally, shift some of our emotional baggage, shift our old perspectives that I wouldn't say are no longer serving us, but our old perspectives that may need to be broadened. Sometimes we need to broaden our perspective, right? And sometimes as we're being given an opportunity to broaden our perspective, we kind of we still want to be rigid. We still want to be confined to the old perspective. And we're like, no, God, fit it into my box that I already have. And God is like, but no, beloved, you actually have to expand that box to be able to receive this blessing that I'm giving to you. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm not doing this to you. I'm doing this for you because I love you so much. And I want to give you the blessing of everything that your heart desires. And I think sometimes, you know, we just kind of have to be open to receiving without judgment. And that's probably the trickiest part of this whole process to navigate through. But what I do want to say is that the Venus retrograde is actually taking place in the sign of Gemini. And Gemini is the greatest teacher. You know, it's that duality. It's the balance between darkness and light. And it's that experience of really going from 0 to 100 back down to 50, maybe to 25, like we're literally, because Gemini is, you know, a mutable air sign, like we do kind of very quickly move all over the place, and we kind of have to learn how to ride with the waves of things in that regards. And I think that that's what this Venus retrograde is really trying to help us to do, seeing as it's in the sign of Gemini. But it is actually going to go direct this week on the 25th, so if I'm not mistaken, the 25th would be Thursday. And this is basically our final window of opportunity, guys, between now and Thursday, to really make the necessary changes within our romantic relationships, and really also within our sibling relationships as well. And this isn't something that most astrologers speak about when it comes to Venus retrograde, but considering that Venus is in the sign of Gemini, and Gemini mainly sort of looks at our sibling relationships and friendships, I really want to urge somebody, you know, to really evaluate their relationship with a sibling, really evaluate their relationship with a sibling that may be very troubled, and just try to understand them, try to take some compassion on them, try to just observe them, and try not to take it personally. You know, whatever it is that they're going through, that's something that they're trying to navigate through within themselves. You just so happen to be collateral damage to their process, and it's nothing personal on you. At some point, we're all villains in each other's story. We just have to accept that fact, because without that story of being the victim, we will never know that we were actually the victors of our experience. So just really take this time as well over the course of the next few days to maybe dive deeper into rekindling a relationship with a sibling, and really maybe sort of help yourself to peel back some of the layers of whatever frustrations you may be having with that person that may be blocking the relationship from materializing in the way that you truly intend for it to. Because sometimes, like I said, we may be wanting something, but we don't realize that we're blocking our blessings, guys. And sometimes those blockings of our blessings shows up in a way where our heart is hardened towards the blessings that God's giving us, because our ego refuses to shift its perspective, guys. And that's the beauty of this solar eclipse. That's the beauty of this Cancer new moon solar eclipse. It's really giving us an opportunity to dive deep within the challenges that we have within our home situations, and a lot of the relationships that we may struggle with our siblings, I want to say, may have a lot to do with our maternal relationships. That sibling might feel as though the mother that you share may be favoritized you in comparison to them, and that's something that they're working through. That's something that their ego is still got a wall up to you, up against you because of that. But if you can open your hearts to let them sort of see and know that you aren't any better, you weren't favored because you were better, you were simply you needed a little bit more attention, you needed a little bit more affection, you needed a little bit more nurturing, and God was nice enough to be able to bless and bestow that upon you in your lifetime. And it doesn't take away anything from your sibling. If anything, it just shows how strong they were, because they needed a little bit less than you did. And because of what you guys went through, thank them. Thank them for the sacrifice that they made. And I'm about to get emotional because I can feel like this is like something very deep for some people, where they're still carrying a lot of like anger towards siblings because of the dynamics of the maternal relationships. And I just want to say, like, it's not your mom loving you anymore or loving them any less. It's just that sometimes, right, it is a little bit easier for our parents to give to those who can ask for what they need. Okay, because sometimes the siblings that we may be sort of battling with and having the combative energies with, they may not have asked in the same way that you had asked for whatever love they felt like they didn't get. Or you may have been the one that felt like you didn't get the love because your sibling was busy getting that favoritism. But that's a false narrative, beloved. They simply needed more because you required less. You were a little bit more whole within yourself. You were a little bit more complete within yourself. And you guys don't have to keep playing out the cycles of the old chapters of the past, because this is a new dawn of a new day, beloveds. Like, we're really getting an opportunity to really open our hearts and open our minds to so many aspects of ourselves that we've shut ourselves off from. And when we block our blessings, it's not that we're blocking anybody else's blessings. We're blocking our blessings. We're blocking a version of ourselves that God has decreed to be our purpose here in this lifetime, and we're falling short on purpose simply because our hearts have been hardened to the experiences of our circumstances. And God knows, I want to say this, like, God knows and understands the struggles of your journey. It's just that you may have a little bit more of a deeper connection with God. You may have a little bit more of a solid relationship with God, and they may not have such a solid relationship, and they may have needed that external engagement to be able to help them feel valid within their experiences, help them to validate their feelings, help them to basically honor their experiences. And again, it really isn't personal. I do want to sort of mention as well, Gemini being ruled by the planet Mercury, we are getting an opportunity to really speak our hearts, frustrations. But we have to learn how to do this tactfully, guys, because if we don't learn this cycle, we do have another Mercury retrograde later this year that is pretty much just going to bring up a lot of these issues for us to really work through again, because God is giving us many attempts, guys. We get so many opportunities to grow, we get so many opportunities to evolve and change, but I guess nothing happens before its time, and God isn't judging us for that. So let's not judge ourselves, let's not judge others. Let's take this time to observe parts of the experience where we may not necessarily feel worthy of God's purpose, or they themselves may not feel worthy of God's purpose over their lives. And we just kind of have to just go through the process without judgment, guys. Without, the best way that I can put it, the only reason why we judge others is from the psychological warfare of fear. Okay, the reason why we choose to project our judgment outside of ourselves is because we fear to look at ourselves in that mirror and really just own and take accountability for who we are and how we show up in the world and how at times we may not be living in our greatest reflection of ourselves, and that's okay. You know, the only way that we're going to be able to learn is to be able to be completely open and honest and transparent with ourselves. But I do also want to sort of put across the fact that, you know, with this Venus being in Gemini for the last 6 weeks, guys, and this has been like very, very, very tricky for us all to navigate through. And I say that with my own personal situation and circumstances as well, but Spirit is basically saying there's a way to go about things. You know, it's okay to be frustrated, but if you're projecting that at that person and making your issues their problems, it's only going to come back to you to show you that it was originally your issue in the first place. So we have to take the time to work at these things. We have to take the time to basically own what is rightfully ours. And like I said at the start of this forecast, you know, it's not necessarily sometimes that we have to do anything. And with all of these retrogrades that we've got going this week, it isn't necessarily about doing anything but accepting. Like really just accepting the reality of all of the hurt, the pain of the past, the karma of all of the baggage that we've been carrying because of pain from the past and the traumatic experiences that we've had. I do also want to sort of like put across as well for those of you guys who are sort of going through breakups in relationships. The relationship's breaking down right now. And if you continue to hold on, the sad truth is that when Venus goes retrograde again in the next 18 months, it may lead to divorce. And that's not a bad thing. It really isn't. I just want to put that across to someone. It's just that Spirit is saying that that chapter has ended and now it's time for the new norm. You know, I want to say for some of you guys who are navigating through the process of your romantic relationships, that are peeling back the layers of your traumas, that are taking accountability for what's rightfully yours, that isn't necessarily just projecting, you know, the wounds of your past onto your partner, you guys will be able to navigate through this process to the point by which where the next 18 months from now, when Venus does go retrograde again, a lot of the lessons that you have been navigating through for this particular cycle, you've already done the exams. You know, I'm not going to say that it's not going to show up again, because that is a lie. That's a false narrative, and I would never want to give you guys false hope. But what I do want to say is that you'll be better equipped to deal with those challenges and the lessons of those challenges when they show up 18 months from now. Why? Because you took this moment in this timeline to be able to observe what is necessary for you guys to be able to disengage from realities that aren't serving you guys for where you're going as a couple moving forward. And the beauty is the relationship will be transformed in such magnificence, is what I'm hearing in my subconscious mind. You know, it will almost be a magical experience for you 18 months from now, where as the challenges of the retrogrades show up again, you are a little bit more adept at navigating through the process. You're kind of like, you know, you're already preparing, your goggles are on and you've got your snorkeling gear on and you're just like, right, I'm ready. I know how to get from here to here, you know. And I think what I do want to say in terms of, you know, what is actually taking place right now, we're navigating through anger, guys. And anger, if it is expressed passively, can be destructive. I want to repeat that again. Anger, if expressed passively, can be destructive. If we can actually learn how to communicate our frustrations and our anger in a way that will allow for the other person to understand and understand that we're angry, without us having to basically point the finger at them and making them responsible for triggering us, they can only trigger something that already exists within ourselves. So technically, it's not their fault. They are simply just showing up as a mirror reflection of us to let us know that we already had anger within us. It was living somewhere in our liver, trying to let us know that we needed to be able to heal and transmute it and work on it, work at it even, by learning how to become a better master of communicating through the vibration of anger. Okay? Another thing that I want to sort of like speak about as well, I do just want to say, really utilize this eclipse energy, guys, and really give thanks to the people that do trigger you at this time. Why? Because without their triggers, you would have continued to live in a false narrative. You would have continued to tell yourself that you're okay and you're doing the work and you're perfect as you are, and, you know, you're further along on your journey and they're so far behind. But the reality is, if they are still a part of your experience, chances are there are still things that we are both learning from each other. Each one teach one, guys. It isn't just a learning opportunity or a teaching experience for us. As we learn, we teach, and we have to be able to honor our experiences with the students that are in the classroom learning from us, just as much as we are honoring the experiences of the teachers that are teaching us about ourselves through our experiences with them, and we have to be grateful. We have to be thankful for the way that they go through the process of the lessons, because like I said, sometimes the best lessons are learning through experience, and we could have been told the same thing over and over again. This path may not be serving, this path may not be right for you, but until you go down that path and end up in the alleyway and you realize that it's a dead end, you would have continued to tell yourself that that was the direction that you needed to take, and everybody else was holding you back because they didn't understand. And God just needs for you to go down that road so that you can see and observe for yourself that it leads you nowhere but to a place of destruction. What I do also want to sort of put across as well, we're learning how to get better, not bitter. I want to say that again. We are learning throughout this Cancer new moon solar eclipse to get better, not bitter. Because a lot of the times, through the experiences that we navigate through life, we kind of get to a place where we just become very dark within ourselves without even knowing that that's the part of ourselves that is really projecting and manifesting through us, because we're living in our Luciferian ego of pride, our Luciferian concept of pride, assuming that there's nothing wrong with being proud of our accomplishments. Absolutely. If you're not proud of your accomplishments, you will fall into a sense of worthlessness, and that's just as disruptive to the soul's journey. It's just as painful to the soul's journey. So I'm not saying to anybody, don't be proud of the work that you've done, but just take an opportunity to be honest with yourself about the fact that there's still more work to be done. There's still more work that is necessary for you to be able to fulfill your purpose. And this point is only a minuscule, how can I put it? In terms of like the graph, like the scale, that's it. In terms of the scale of you fulfilling purpose, this is only one small part of the journey that is creating the bigger picture that Spirit is utilizing you as a vessel to paint. So just be humble, okay? Because Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter are all in retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, as I mentioned. And our 10th house is all about life's purpose. We're really going back to revisit some of the things that we hadn't necessarily worked on that was really affecting our ability to live in purpose. And Spirit's giving us an opportunity to reconstruct it. Spirit's giving us an opportunity to reevaluate it even. And I think what I can see that these planets, because I was like intuitively, writing some notes before I sort of came into this space, just observing the charts basically for this week. And it seems as though Spirit, with all these, with Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter being in retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, it is going to be a lot of work. And we do need to sort of realize that at this point, that work is necessary. On the 23rd, I mentioned that we have Neptune going retrograde in the sign of Pisces. No more pretending, guys. No more unrealistic, false narratives about why we do the things that we do. And, how can I put it? We don't get to lie to ourselves anymore, basically. Neptune is going to be calling us out. It is going to be calling us out subconsciously, and it's going to be helping us to do the work spiritually so that we can evolve. What I will say, because I am going to do like a moon forecast for the different days of the week after this, guys, because I can see that there's like a lot that we're navigating through this week, and I basically have to like compartmentalize it all so that I can sort of really dive deep into it and give it to us. I'll be doing that off camera, just for like future reference. I'll be doing that off live, but on the 23rd and the 24th, just before Venus goes retrograde, we're going to have 6 planets that are actually retrograde. We're going to have Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and Neptune all retrograde on the 23rd and the 24th of this month, being this week. So basically Tuesday and Wednesday, is going to be an intensely dense energy for us to navigate through. Why? Because we need to be able to really, how can I put it, really dive deep within ourselves. So we go from the sign of Cancer to the sign of Leo on Tuesday around about 12:34 in the afternoon UK time, GMT, and that is basically where we're going to be asked to go into our heart center, guys. We're going to be diving deep into our heart center, and as we go and dive in there, we may find that there's a lot of hate, resentment, just disdain for the way that we've been treated by others. And because Chiron is in retrograde in our first house in the sign of Aries throughout this entire year, that wounded warrior within ourselves is learning how to basically patch itself up. So we're learning how to heal ourselves. We're learning how to transmute the wounds of our past and observe them through the eyes and lens of love, instead of this false narrative that everything was basically happening to break us down. It is happening to break us through the old version of ourselves so that we can break into the new version of ourselves, yes. And sometimes in order for that to take place, the old has to be broken down. That's why heartbreak is necessary for us to be able to heal. If we didn't get heartbroken, what would we be healing from? It's a process. Everything is relative, guys. What I do want to say is just kind of watch out for the energies on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Those 3 days are going to be our most trickiest days. We've got Neptune going retrograde on Tuesday. All 6 of the planets are going to be retrograde on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then on Thursday, Venus goes direct, which means that we're now going to start to feel the effect of the energy of the work that we've been doing in our romantic partnerships for the last 6 weeks, starting to materialize. So the week is going to take a lot of paddling. Just paddle, guys. If you feel like you're sinking and you feel like you're drowning, just paddle. Sometimes you don't even need to do anything. Just float. Just surrender. Lay on your back and let the current of the waves take you to where you need to be. Just surrender. Because it seems that throughout this week, that is ultimately what we're going to be asked to do. We are going to be asked to surrender. We are going to be asked to let go. We are going to be asked to release ourselves from, I wouldn't say anything that is no longer serving us, but I want to say release ourselves from holding ourselves back. Release ourselves from not being the person that we intend to be. And in order to do that, we have to surrender this version of ourselves. Just lay back, guys, and let the currents take you. Trust the process. What I do want to say as well, a lot of our old philosophies that aren't necessarily in alignment with the person that we're growing into, it has to die, and when I say die, I don't mean that it is going to completely dissolve. It is simply going to expand itself, and you have to give yourself the room for it to do so. Okay, communication, tactful communication is definitely advised. If you don't feel like you're speaking from a place of compassion, just don't say anything. Like, honestly, why I say that is because you're only going to create more negative karma for yourself, and that energy will come back to you, and it will simply come back to you to let you know that you didn't communicate from a place of love. You didn't communicate from a place of compassion. You didn't communicate from a place of your inner peace within yourself. And despite whatever distorted concept we want to sort of tell ourselves, if the energy comes back to us and it doesn't show up in the vibration of love, that is not the energy that we put out there. So we have to be mindful of what our tongues are doing at this time, especially because Mercury is now effectively in retrograde, and he is teaching us to be better communicators. And he is, whilst our homes are breaking down, whilst our relationships are breaking down, whilst our relationships with ourselves are breaking down, he's teaching us. He's helping us to learn how to be comfortable with vulnerability. He's teaching us to learn how to just let sleeping dogs lie. There's a saying that, we kind of have. That's what I'm hearing in the back of my mind. Let sleeping dogs lie. If somebody isn't bothering you and you're troubled, don't bother them. Not because It's easy because to bother them would actually be a lot easier. To not bother them with your internal troubles is you sparing them the, how can I put it? It's sparing yourself the guilty conscience, but sparing them the distaste of being collateral damage to your ego's evolving process. Okay, so if you don't have anything nice to say, sit with yourself and observe until you can find the positives in the experiences, because even the darkest of experience actually has a positive intention behind it, and that positive intention is that God loves us unconditionally, and he's teaching us how to love ourselves unconditionally. But we love with so many restrictions, we love with so many confined notions of what it needs to be, what it has to be, what it's supposed to be. If we can just surrender to what we think it should be, we may actually learn that this is exactly how it should be. And whatever we thought that it was supposed to be was only something that was going to make us comfortable along the process. And the thing about silent observation is that it helps us. It saves the other person, from becoming collateral damage to our ego, but it also helps us to create more positive karma for ourselves. The Bible says, beloveds, to think sin is not a sin, but to act from a place of sin is to commit a crime of sin. So we have to understand that even though we might think negatively at times, it doesn't make us bad people, it makes us human. What we choose to do with those thoughts is what creates the negative karma that comes back to us as sin. Okay? I'm going to love you guys and sort of close out the space. Now they're asking me to pull a card for you guys. So I'm going to pull a card. I'm going to pull a stress less card for you guys for this week as we sort of navigate through this week, because it seems like it's going to be a very dense week. Midweek, it's going to start to get tricky. But because we've literally just now had the solar eclipse, the energies in itself is going to be really, really challenging for us to navigate through. So let's have a little look, guys. What do you advise for us collectively as we navigate through the energies of this week? In terms of all... Okay. Right. The advice for us, guys, is to hug, touch, or be gentle. And I'm going to read the card for us. Hug and touch other people as often as possible. If not physically, I'm going to get emotional, so just bear with me, guys, because I can feel the energy of people actually being able to live in this vibration this week, and it's speaking to my soul. If not physically, you can be gentle to others with words and actions. Bring gentleness and consideration to your speech. Ask people how they are and genuinely listen, and sprinkle good and encouraging words into your sentences. Physical touch and touching words produce oxytocin, which reduces anxiety and fear, the basic elements of stress. Okay? So when you feel like you're struggling with something, just hug yourself. I can't tell you how many times I'm, going through something and I've just had to stop and just give myself a hug. Why? Because I need it. In that moment, there's nobody around, and if I can give that kind of love to somebody else and give somebody a hug and really allow for my heart to connect to theirs, what damage does it do to give myself a hug and allow my heart to connect to itself? So at times throughout this week where you may be struggling, give yourself a hug and give others hugs as they may be faced with dealing with the challenges of their own resistances to the changes that are coming for us this week. Okay, beloveds, it's going to be a magnificent week, but it is going to come with its challenges. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a blessing thing. We don't necessarily even fully, understand or understand the concept of blessing just yet, because we think it's just about receiving. But blessings come to us because of what we give, beloveds. And it's a heart engagement with the universe. So as we navigate through this process, just bless someone with the love of your heart. Hug them with your heart. Hug them with your words. Hug them with your wisdom. Hug them with your kindness. Hug them with your beautiful soul. And let them know that somebody supports them at this time throughout the journey. Okay, beloveds? I'm going to love you guys and leave it there for you guys, because I'm assuming I'm going to be cut off soon. And yeah, I don't want to sort of like wait till I get all the way to the end. I am going to put this video on my YouTube channel as well, guys. So if you guys are watching this via my YouTube channel, definitely be sure to comment down below throughout this week and let me know how you guys have been finding the energies of this week. Definitely be sure to give me a like and subscribe if you like my vibe and you want to be a part of the tribe, man. I'd be happy to have you and be a part of the process of your journey as well. On that note, beloveds, that is my 30-second countdown. I'm going to send you nothing but love, light, and positive intentions for the journey ahead. And I bid you farewell, beloveds. Namaste. God bless. Mwah. Take care, guys. I'll see you in the next video. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more.